Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is the Narcissistic Resistance. And this resistance video is sponsored by contribution from Anonymous. And here's his story. I do not know how to define my parents. My mother is from a well-to-do family in the oil business, while my father is from an old military family. I was born in Oklahoma in the early 80s during the adoption of native children trend. This was before the Indian Child Welfare Act went into full effect. I am 100% full blood of a small tribe. My adopted family was in their mid to late 30s when they adopted me. My father wanted me, and my mother, I believe, was signaling. My father was a military psychiatrist at the time of my birth while my mother was traveling. By 1990, they had both divorced. Because of my father's living situation, I stayed with my mother. My mother, within a year, remarried, and I became a third wheel. I acted up, and they put me on Ritalin. My father had no say. When it did, My father had no say. When it did not stop, I was sent to a child psych hospital. I stayed there for a year. It was a literal prison with locked doors and screaming. I was released after they said I had improved. I then went to a boys' private boarding school where I was abused sexually by a woman. I screamed and told her to stop, but she kept going and slapped and hurt me. When I told my mother, she said I was making it up, and if it did happen, I would have liked it. I kept trying to tell her, and I got into physical altercation with her and was once again sent to a children's psych hospital. I was 8. After 6 months, and this is the problem, these narcs, they adopt children like they're pets, and you are a pet. And much like a pet, when it acts up, they want to put it out. After 6 months, my grandmother bailed me out, and she saw what was going on and took me to live with her. I stayed with her for several months until my dad retired from the military. When the joint custody hearing happened, I was sitting outside in a hall when my mother and stepfather were being interviewed by a caseworker, and I heard my mother crying. Excuse me. I heard my mother crying, and then my stepfather clearly say I was a monster and needed to stay locked up. Soon after, I moved in with my father. I stayed on my meds for several more months and picked out my eyelashes and eyebrows. Hurt myself. My father was the only one who listened. Because of the way the court ruled, I had to go visit her every other weekend and on holidays. So your father got primary custody. I could not stand it and stayed in my room and played video games. When holiday came around, I was paraded around like a helpless rescue. And when dinner or present opening, my cousins and I were shoved in the corner and not to be seen and heard. This still happens as an adult. Even though we did not get along, I desperately wanted my mother's affection. At 17 and a half, I joined the Army and spent 6+ years. One stop loss, and I believe, in retrospect, it was to impress her. On my last deployment, I was injured by a VB I.E.D. When I medevac to Germany, she was contacted, and the nurse did not believe she was my mother. In the military, when a soldier is injured, the person on the contact list is offered a free flight to the injured. My mother's response was, I am busy. So, you're thrown away as a child, thrown in the mental institutions, called a monster. All you want is this woman's affection. You go into the military like your dad. 6 years. You get hit with an I.E.D, a roadside bomb. They call your mother. Basically could have been on your deathbed. And they're too busy for you. This is why I tell you. This is why I tell everybody. The narcissist makes their bed, let them die in it. When the narcissist gets sick or injured or is dying, they expect you to run to their bedside. And so many people have this guilt or are looking for this affection that's never going to be there. Yet, offered every amenity to get to you. Your mother was just too busy as her son was hit with an improvised explosive device in a war zone. I promise you, if you had been killed, you'd have seen the pity party. But she don't want to get involved because she don't know the extent of your injuries. She don't want to do for you what she would expect you to do for her. What they demand that you do for them. My wife spent years with me through the recuperation, but my mother hated her and called her names and a slut. The last time my mother and I talked, we yelled at each other, and she blamed me for her divorce and me going to live with my dad. That was 5 years ago. I do not have PTSD from Iraq or Afghanistan, but at night I wake up shaking and screaming, almost hitting me with anger over what happened with my mother. In my dreams, I take out my anger on her. Please help. Well, first of all, Anonymous, thank you for your service. I'm sorry for your injury. Okay, and these are lasting injuries. He wrote a little preamble that he asked me not to read out, but these are obviously lasting injuries he received from that I.E.D. But here's your lesson here. The narcissist does more damage than an I.E.D., than a roadside explosive could ever do to you. Because you're not waking up with PTSD from being in 2 fucking war zones. No, you're waking up with PTSD over your mother, over what your mother did to you, over your mother basically throwing you in prison at 8 years old, calling you a monster, How did you last in the military for 6 years if you were this out of control monster, by the way? What I would suggest to you, what I'm going to tell you is you have to keep talking about it. You have to keep exposing your mother. The more you expose her and the longer you keep her out of your life and the further you can get away from her, the better you're going to be long term. Your mother is more destructive than an I.E.D. Literally. Literally. More destructive than an I.E.D., than an improvised explosive device. She wanted you to get killed there. She hates you. She resents you. She doesn't want to see you happy. She hates your wife. She's a whore. And you wake up with PTSD, not from the roadside bomb, not from your injuries, not from your permanent injuries from Iraq or Afghanistan, wherever this happened, but from childhood. You were already destroyed. You already got hit with the narcissistic I.E.D., which we have found out, which I guess you are living proof. The narcissistic I.E.D. is more powerful than an actual I.E.D. And that's a real shame. So I hope that helps. Thank you so much, Anonymous, for your story and your contribution. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a narcissist you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up Skype, a phone call, have a private video made, or a Facebook live chat, or you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it supported, growing, and successful, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you guys. Without you, all of this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been the Narcissistic Resistance.